to today's program, Israel Vision Magazine. Today, Jay, we're going to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, which happens to be the largest in the world.
The name of this museum, or this, actually they want to be called a memorial, is called Yad Vashem, which means, from the Bible, a place and a name. So that the name of these people, the 6 million that died, will never be forgotten. And it's a very heavy subject, but we have a wonderful guide for you to take us through this vitally important place. The Word of God says in Isaiah chapter 52, it says, "How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who proclaim glad tidings of good things, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns."
But how are you reading a scripture on good news and joy when you're talking about the Holocaust?
Because we are committed to bringing good news from Zion, and we want people to remember the price that's been paid for the existence of this state of Israel. It was, as Jesus said, unless a seed fall on the ground and it abides alone, but then comes the life. This whole nation of Israel was resurrected, in a sense, out of the death of the death camps of the Holocaust. And one of the things that I like to remind our viewers is that we are giving you an alternate view to the news that you get on your evening telecast. For example, these are very prestigious magazines, Time Magazine, Newsweek, the Jerusalem Report, and I love reading them, but they don't always give you a biblical perspective on the events that are happening here in the Middle East. And that's the purpose of Israel Vision Magazine. And we would like to hear from you. So please remember, at the end of the program, get your pens ready, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Already in 1940, the order that all the Jews have to move into specially designated areas, which are called the ghettos. Nearly every big city in Poland has a special ghetto for the Jews. We are entering the Warsaw Ghetto, which is one of the biggest and the longest existing. We have to remember that for a Jewish person in the ghetto, if this person, woman, child, old person, is there for a week, for 2, if they survive, or for a year or 2, the difference is huge. And the Warsaw Ghetto was one of the most terrible places. We can see the Warsaw Ghetto wall. Of course, the wall is built by forced Jewish labor. Again, if we think who is behind the camera, who is taking these pictures, this is all pictures taken by the Germans, by the Nazis, the anti-Jewish propaganda. Look at these people, look what they look like. Now they're not very clean, they don't look very well. Of course, this is all part that at last we, the Germans, are dealing with this problem, which is called the Jews. Again, the building of the Warsaw Ghetto wall. These pictures were taken by a German soldier who, on his birthday, gets a camera. We're in 1941 in September, and what I would like you to see in these pictures, basically he is going on a sightseeing trip because he has nothing to do in the ghetto. He's not a member of the SS. He's just a German who is stationed in Warsaw. We have to remember that Poland has become Germany. They've occupied it. There is no government in Poland. It's Germany. And basically he enters the ghetto because he wants to see on the entrance. The ghettos are, of course, the ghetto is surrounded by a wall, but there are a few entrances to the Warsaw Ghetto. It says, do not enter, diseases inside. Of course, the Jews, they are known to carry diseases. Maybe he has never seen a Jewish person before. We don't know. But he comes in, he takes more than 120 photographs, and what I would like you to remember here is that what these pictures show us is only 10 months after the ghetto is established. And what we see here, children dying on the streets of hunger, of disease. The supply of food is very, very scarce, of medicine very scarce. It's very cold. We are in Poland, and people are just on the streets, and people are dying. And this is the first part of what the Germans basically plan, that the Jews in the ghettos will just die off by themselves. And this is what it looks like. At this stage, There are killings, but these are not mass killings as yet. We are only in 1941, and already we can see, if you look at the mass graves here, these people who every day are just taken off the streets, but we cannot look at them as masses of people, because each one of them was part of a family, a boy, a woman, a mother, a grandmother, a child. We don't know who they are. The majority of them, especially from the Warsaw Ghetto, large areas of Poland, there's no one left to tell us who these people were. Okay, we are in the Warsaw Ghetto. What the museum did, we actually brought the actual cobblestones from one of the roads, streets in the Warsaw Ghetto. Again, if we look at the pictures, we can see the original street over there, and it's like a continuation. We have actually entered into Warsaw in September 1941, and if we look what these people, for example, if we look at these pictures here, we see that this German soldier by the name of Heinz Just, who took the pictures, he was very interested in the fate of this boy who is doing, if we look what he's doing, he's burying at that stage. Burying meant that you just throw the people into pits, and this is the good stage of the ghetto, because later there are no people to even take the people who are dead on the streets. They're just lying there because nobody can do it anymore. But this boy, who is probably 13 or 14, we don't know who he is, and he is doing this work because he probably, like most of the people, this is part of the whole deceit. Most of the Jews in the ghettos are promised that if one of the family works, the others, the parents or his sister, maybe his younger siblings, will be able to survive. If one works, work liberates. This is the motto of the Germans. We have to make the Jews to work first, because they never did before, the whole part of the racial anti-Jewish ideology. And he's probably promised that for this he will get some soup. Maybe he can share it with someone from his family. People do not know that there is a plan to exterminate them all. The hope is always there because of this whole ideology of not allowing the people to know, the deceit. They're telling them, if you work, you will survive. You will be taken to places in the east where there will be special labor camps, work, food for everyone. Even until the very end, even until 1944, the Allies are already bombing Germany, they're already winning the war. The Germans still want to get rid of as many Jews as possible. Even at that stage, the people have no idea, the majority have no idea what is going to happen to them. We are in the part of the ghettos. We have pictures from 3 big ghettos in Poland, which are Warsaw, Krakow and Lodz. Of course, there were other ghettos as well. I would like to point here to, again, we're looking at masses of people, but each one of them was an individual. For example, if we look at this picture, the doctor, the Jewish doctor with a star. Of course, he's Jewish, he has to be in the ghetto. There are all those children. Each of these children are malnourished. There is no food, very little medicine. Some medicine is entered into the ghetto, smuggled from the Polish side, and he has to make this terrible moral choice. Some of the children are weaker, some of the children are smaller. If he gives the medicine to the stronger ones, maybe they'll survive. They do not know what is going to happen to them. None of these people have any idea that there is a plan to exterminate them all, only because they're Jews. But this person, how can a doctor make a moral decision that he will only give the medicine to some of the children and the others, because they're weak, he will not give any to because they will die anyway, even if he gives it to? And this is only an example of a mother who maybe she's starving herself. She gets half a loaf of bread for a week, that's what they would get, or for 3 days, it depended on which ghetto. Again, the laws are different. But she is very hungry herself. Maybe she has 3 children. How can she divide this food? What is happening? We think of these people are living in the ghettos sometimes for a month, for 2. They die, but some of them continue living. My mother, who is a survivor of the Warsaw Ghetto, she was 18 at the time, with her parents in the ghetto, because they told that all the younger people, she's 18, she has a sister who is there, they're both working inside the ghetto for this meager portion of soup. Her parents are all older at that age, 60 was already very old, they cannot work, but she's promised that if she works, then her parents will get, her mother and father will get this piece of paper that will save them as well from deportation. At that stage, deportation means they don't know where they're going. But of course, one day she goes to work. She's working in a brush workshop where she has to make brushes. She never did that before. She has no idea, but she has to learn. And of course, she works there for 12 hours for this little piece of bread that she brings home to her mother and father. And at some point, one day that was a bit later, in 1942 in the summer, when she gets home, she sees there's no one there. They had been taken away. Of course, later, she knew what it meant. At the time, she went to this place where the Jews would be gathered in the Warsaw Ghetto, the Umschlagplatz, from where the trains left to Treblinka extermination camp, but she could not find them. What the Germans do, the whole deceit that they do not again tell the Jews that their families had been taken to extermination, but that they've been taken to a camp where they're alive, and that the Jews who are in the ghetto, they have to send them packages of food. Maybe they're cold. They have to send them something, when already for months they are not alive, because Treblinka, like other extermination camps, that was death upon arrival. There was no selection even. Everybody was sent to the gas chambers. This part shows maintaining human dignity. What the Nazis, the Germans, are trying to do is to dehumanize the Jews. But actually, if we think about it, who is dehumanized here? If we think that the Germans, the Nazis, they are doing this to the Jews and to other people that we have to mention. But the dehumanization is of the Germans, because they are treating the people in this way. And of course, one part, a very important part of the, if we can call it life in the ghettos, is that the Jews continue to maintain their human dignity in different ways. If it's religion, we have to remember that some people are asking, where is God? What is going on? Some people started believing, some lost their religion. Some, it's a very individual thing, everybody was different, but what we see here is, of course, any kind of religious or cultural activity is totally forbidden in the ghettos. But even we have a picture here of underground classes. They're trying to continue their life, to teach their children. We can see a woman here who is teaching geography or history inside the ghetto, but the map is of Palestine, of Israel before the war. The only hope that these people have is that maybe they will survive. If they survive, maybe they will be able to get out. Maybe the hope of survival, because they do not know what is going to happen to them, that there is a plan to exterminate all of them. And the hope, the survival continues throughout. And the Jews, wherever they are, if it's in the ghettos or later also in the camp, even the extermination camps, do continue with art. If we look here, we can see different art objects that are made in the Lodz ghetto. If we think that these people are barely surviving, that they have no food, and still they do continue creating, making things, because that's being a human being. We are in the stage of the blitzkrieg, of the invasion to the Soviet Union, 1941, the very high success of the German army, of course, invading the Soviet Union, the ex-Soviet Union, and the new method of killing, the killing by the special killing squads, which are called the Einsatzgruppen, who are special killing squads to get rid of the Jews who are especially living on the border of Poland and ex-Soviet Union. We're talking about the Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Belarus. The Jews are taken out of the places where they're living out into the forest or the field, and they themselves have to dig their own grave, huge mass graves, and they're just shot and exterminated in that way. This is what we call today the first part of the mass final solution. Again, to think who is standing behind, who is taking these pictures. These pictures were, most of them were taken by the Germans themselves. Again, they're already documenting what they're doing to the Jews. They're getting rid of them. And if we look at the mass grave here, this is probably a family who already know that they're going to be shot, including the little girl and the grandfather, probably. And they're being shot, they fall down into the grave. They're even, the Germans or the collaborators there are so nice that if someone is still moving, they will walk inside the grave to finish them off. Of course, the whole idea is for these people first, they undress, they have to give all their valuables, their clothing even, is either sent off to Germany or given to the collaborators on the spot. And thousands of Jews are killed in this way here. Again, if we think, if this is a family, they want to die together. They know they're going to die because this is done very clearly now. We see those women here. Again, probably a grandmother, mother, and two daughters who are undressing, and they can see what's going on. They are going to die shortly. We are in January 1942. Today we know that the final solution, which meant mass killing of the Jews, also that they will be exterminated by gas, was taken before January 1942. But these are the minutes of the conference in Wannsee, signed by Eichmann and others. They meet in Wannsee, a very beautiful place near Berlin, to actually see what they're going to do and to finalize it only. And even though they do not know how long it's going to take, it's very quickly decided, and we can see the list by country of how many Jews are alive at the time, 11 million. All of these have to be exterminated. This is after using the method of the ghetto and of the killing squads. But from here we enter extermination and extermination camps, and we enter Auschwitz-Birkenau.
Well, there aren't many words after you see something like that. I know that you probably want to be still for a moment and just consider what you have seen. How can such a thing happen? And yet the Holocaust has become such a pivotal part of European history, world history, because every nation somehow was involved. I suppose the thing we need to ask ourselves is, what can we learn from that? Oh, we say that could never happen again, not in our educated world. But it can. In fact, just last month, the British Parliament gave out a warning of a new virus that has infected the United Kingdom. That virus is one of dehumanization and condemnation of the Jewish people. Friends, it's up to you and I to see that it never happens again. We have a voice. We can speak up. We can talk to our neighbors over our coffee cups. We can educate our children that we must honor and support the Jewish people. We must teach our children, if we're Christians, that Jesus is the Messiah and He was a Jew. We can speak into the schools. We can write letters to our local newspapers. When we go to women's tea parties, we can entice them to watch our videos and read our newsletters on what Israel is doing today. The amazing thing about Israel and about the Jewish people is that back in the book of Judges, they declared as a company, "We are your witnesses." And so it is today. Israel is a witness to the entire world, to all of the nations, that there is a God in the heavens, a God who keeps the books, a God who balances the books and keeps the accounts. Again, I encourage you to take a moment and just be still and listen for the still small voice.
Shalom. In my daily experience living here in Israel for the last 30 years, writing TV scripts, editing newsletters, and preparing lecture series on various topics about Israel, I find that there's a basic lack of understanding of the Middle East conflict. And the purpose of these short time segments that we have together is to allow me to share with you some insights that the Lord has given me. I want to open for you what is fact and what is fantasy in this Middle East conflict. The news media coverage of the situation here is often shallow and without perspective. In fact, Lord Acton said, "Truth is the only merit that gives dignity and worth to history." Hopefully, we can learn from history and not repeat mistakes that seem to reoccur from one generation to the next. Jesus gave a warning 2,000 years ago, and that is still applicable today. He said, "Watch out that no one deceives you." In our program today, we continue to focus on the ownership of the land of Israel from the ancient time up until the modern era. Following the creation of the State of Israel in 1948 and the miraculous fact of Israel's existence after being attacked by 6 Arab armies of the surrounding nations, the map of Israel looked like this. From 1951 to 56, Israel, however, did not know peace. There were, as it is today, continuous incursions of terrorists, which forced Israel to take military action to defend herself. At that time, world opinion said that Israel's military strike in 1956 was unprovoked. The fact is that Israel was hit repeatedly by Egyptian military and local Fedayeen terrorists in clear violation of the UN armistice agreements. And in 1956, there were 3,800 attacks that killed 100 Israelis and wounded 364. Fighting terrorism is a daily experience for Israel in a battle for survival. Next week, I want to separate the fact from the fantasy concerning the Six-Day War in June of 1967. You won't want to miss it. Hope to see you then. Shalom.
After seeing that program, don't you feel differently about Israel? You've seen something of the roots of this nation. How important it is to get behind the news, to get behind the propaganda and the anti-Semitism, and to find the historical facts of how this nation came to birth.
As we walk down the streets in Israel today, we can see on the faces of the people, etched into them, the pain, the price, the cost of the existence of this
just to
state.
Live.
And some people even have numbers written on their arm that goes back to the Holocaust days. And one lady, I remember, she was showing our children, back in the Haifa days when we lived there, she was showing our children her number.
Yes.
And she says, "Oh yes, by the way, I've got my telephone number written right on my arm."
I know. And Jay, I remember another man who came and showed us his number. And he was 13 years old when he was sent to Auschwitz and when they put the number on his arm. And he became ill. And he was called up for medical examination, too weak to work, which means that his days were numbered. And his number was, it was like 9s and 8s and 1s and 0s. And he was able to turn his arm in such a way that they read it as a 6 instead of a 9, and his life was saved.
Awesome. We're going to have a tour this year in November, and we would like to take you to Yad Vashem as a part of that tour, and we want to invite you to come and be with us. It'll be our joy to host you and to take you around the nation, to introduce you to some of these very special people, real heroes in society, and to take you to some of the people that we are helping through your gifts and through your support of this ministry. we are going to help lots and lots of people, hurting and needy people, such as the orphans, the widows, the fatherless, and we'll take you to them.
Shalom from Jerusalem.
Yes, we want to say, as we always do at the end,
Shalom from Jerusalem.